Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Matt here today checking out a Victrix rifle. This is the Venus small bore and 22 long rifle. I actually had this exact rifle for testing back in the spring of 2023, so just about a year ago. It was sent to me by Tom over at Go Big Tactical, and he wanted to sort of just have my opinion on it from a PRS style shooter. But it is also a loaner rifle for the Canadian Rimfire Precision Series. So it does travel with RIC. If you're ever at a CRPS event like the Rimfire Academies or such, this rifle is available for shooters to use. So if you have used it in the past year, this is the exact Venus small bore that was traveling with RIC, but it is back with me now just to finish up my testing and so that I can finally do this video. But all that to say, I did have this last year, and that was actually the first time I had even found out about Victrix as a company. I had no idea about their existence before that, so I did some research back then to just sort of educate myself on Victrix, and it turned out that they are an Italian company, and so as you might expect, they definitely pay a lot of attention to their craftsmanship. The machining on this thing is really nice, but I had never seen one in person here in Canada or, you know, in my travels to the States either. So it was something that was totally new to me. The Venus small bore here is their iteration of like a competition rimfire rifle, and we'll talk more about my experiences with that in a second. But I had never seen one here, so I guess you can consider Victrix as a more exotic brand for North America anyway. However, after I returned this to RIC for the summer last year, I shot the 2023 World Championship for precision rimfire shooting in Italy. And I actually saw a handful of these Victrix Venus rifles on the line. So clearly in Europe, they're a lot more common, but here in North America, I have still yet to see one on the firing line at a match. So I thought it was a unique opportunity to take a look at this and just give it a little bit of a testing and make a little video to share my thoughts on it as a PRS style shooter. So obviously I don't do bench rest or F-class or anything like that. So I'm going to be looking at this from my own point of view. So just keep that in mind as we go through this video. So I did most of the shooting with the Venus here just off the bench initially to just see how it shot and how the action felt and everything. And I was really impressed. And afterwards, I actually filmed a whole video on match day. I did a 10-stage match basically. But just because of the background noise, I decided to do sort of a more tabletop style video here. But I'll insert the footage of me shooting this at a little club match. So I do have some experience shooting this on stages as well. Overall, I would say that this rifle, it actually shoots quite nicely. I really like the action and the bolt. But a lot of the problems that I personally have with this rifle in terms of PRS style matches is in the chassis design. So this is sold as an entire unit, obviously not the scope, but the barreled action comes in its own chassis and everything. So it's sort of like one unit from Victrix that you can buy. And again, this is the Venus small bore. There is a Venus Pro small bore, and we'll talk about that later in the video because that I believe alleviates a lot of the issues that I personally had using this for PRS style matches. I did throw a scope on here. This is not the scope that I was running, but I just find precision rifles look funny with no scope, so I threw my Venom on here just for the video. But I was using this mostly with my Razor Gen 3 as well as a Minox LR during my testing. So first, going on to the barreled action, this rifle from Victrix does come in a few different barrel length options. This one here is the 22-inch length. It also comes in a 24 and 26-inch length as well, which is pretty cool. I personally run a 25-inch length barrel for my competition rifles, for my rimfires, and my center fire is a 26-inch with a break on it, obviously, so it's even a little bit longer. If I had a choice and I was buying this rifle for myself, I'd probably favor the longer lengths, either 24 or 26 inches, but this one here is the 22-inch. It is threaded at the muzzle. It is a metric thread. I can't remember exactly what it is, but you can throw a muzzle device or a suppressor, you know, or sorts on the end of that barrel. And this one here on the Venus is a slightly lighter profile barrel. I would say like a sporter style barrel. It does taper right about here, and then it's just like a straight profile all the way out to the muzzle. The action itself is very nice, actually. As I mentioned before, the machining on this entire thing, both the chassis and the action and barrel, is really well done by Victrix. And you can just tell by how the bolt feels. It is one of the best feeling actions I have ever felt, and that's including the Rim-X action, which I'm very impressed with. I really like the Rim-X action. It's one of the nicest feeling actions in my opinion for, you know, the 700 clone rimfires. But this one, in my opinion, might be even smoother than that. And the tolerances are really nice. There's hardly any bolt slop. It is a PVD coating on the bolt, which is, it just feels really slick and nice. Even when I run the bolt dry, it feels really good. So I think that the machining on this thing is quite nice, and it's, again, just a really good feeling bolt. The bolt design is pretty standard in terms of the setup. There's nothing too crazy going on. You do have a like 2-section design with the bolt nose, the firing pin, and extractors, as you see on a lot of these rimfire actions, and it works well. The barrel seems to be held into the action with 6 grub screws, so like 3 on either side, so it's a fairly secure method of attaching that. And it was a laser beam. This thing wasn't very picky on ammo, and it shot really tight groups. Anything from like a 0.4 downwards was what it could do consistently with good match grade ammo at 50 yards. So I was really happy with that. And I think the action itself with this barrel on it is definitely a winner. It can shoot really, really nicely. So I had no issues with that at all. The bolt design is kind of funny. It does have like this strange angle to it, and then you have sort of a more rounded bolt knob, which isn't my preference, but again, it feels so nice I can look past that. And it also does look to be interchangeable, so I'm not sure if Victrix offers any other bolt handles, but you can definitely take it off, machine your own if you're so inclined to. The bolt shroud on the back here is really big and chunky, but it works well. You have a very large cocked indicator for the firing pin, and again, that's really nice and obvious, so you know what condition your rifle's in. The safety here on the trigger group does work, but it feels really, I don't really like it. There's like distinct stages, and it takes almost no force to move it, so I don't really like that. I wish it kind of clicked in place a little bit better. Going on to the trigger is really nice. It feels like a nice high quality trigger. It's a single stage, and it's set quite light from the factory, and there is quite a bit of over travel, which I believe you can adjust, but I didn't even play around with it because it felt really nice out of the box. Coming from a Trigger Tech, it feels significantly different because of that over travel, just something I had to get used to. But it is a really nice quality trigger for sure, and it's quite light. It's actually lighter than what I run my personal competition rifles in. If I were to guess, it's probably around 8 to 10 ounces, and I run my triggers closer to a pound usually. But again, it's quite nice. No issues with the trigger at all, and again, 100% reliability in terms of the action and the trigger as well. All right, so the chassis here again comes with the rifle package. It also actually comes with a hard case, which is pretty nice, as well as 2 magazines, 2 10-round magazines, which are these guys here. We'll talk about them in a second. So it comes as one full package, and I would say the chassis is a really good starting point. It really looks promising on paper, but after using it for the matches, I do have some holdups about some things that I personally don't like. I will go over things that I do like first, because I think there's quite a bit to appreciate on this rifle from Victrix, and then I'll talk about the things that I don't quite like. Keeping in mind there is a pro version, which does alleviate a lot of the issues that I will mention. But you do have a nice long forend here with a Arca rail that goes completely throughout the length of the forend. You also have an and-shoot style rail machined into the bottom of that. The front section here is M-LOK. Again, really good for sort of your modularity in terms of stacking weights and using accessories like bipods and stuff in your match style competitions. On both sides, you do have QD points on the front of the forend here, as well as the rear of the buttstock. And it's a 2-piece design, so the buttstock actually attaches with 4 screws here. It's very secure, but that's the way it does attach. It has a built-in thumb shelf machined right into the aluminum. And of course, you have your mag well with a big relief cut here, which I don't know what the purpose of that was, but it is easy to load. I don't really struggle with doing mag changes on this thing. And you do have like some sort of like a serrated face here for, I guess, your barricade stop, if you want to call it that. Buttstock design is good. Really easy adjustments with some buttons on the left side here, and it's spring loaded in the cheek piece, which makes it really easy. And there's just set intervals that it will click into in order for it to be set in place. And then there's also a set screw here that you can tighten down so you don't have to worry about bumping the button during a stage or anything like that. Buttstock here is also adjustable for length of pull, as you might imagine, and it's also adjustable for the height of the butt pad itself. There is some wobble in here, which actually you might be able to take it out with this screw here, but to be honest, I didn't try that. So there was a little bit of wobble while I was using it. Not a huge deal, but it was present again. But I did not screw this down. Maybe that would completely fix that issue. So going on to the things about this rifle that I wasn't in love with. First off, the scope base is really high. I don't know how many millimeters that would be, but it's definitely, you know, maybe like 12 millimeters in height from the action. But that means you need really low scope rings to have your height over bore in sort of the, you know, the range that I would like to see it in. These are low rings from MDT, which I believe are 1 inch in height, if not like a 0.8. I think it's 1 inch in height. And you can see there's still a significant gap over the barrel. It's not huge, like it's definitely usable. It's not a huge deal, but it's just kind of strange that they would choose such a high scope base there. I believe there is some cant built into it. Yeah, it says it's marked under there 20 MOA. So this one comes with a 20 MOA base, but it is quite high. The other thing is the forend is quite thin, or I guess narrow, so it doesn't ride a bag as well as some of the wider chassis, and it does have the slight tuning fork effect to it, sort of like the Gen 1 ACCs, or what's called the ACC Premier now. But when you fill it with weights, or if you have weights on the side, it does alleviate that issue a little bit. Another thing is it's quite short in this dimension, like in the height of it, which means if you're using fairly what I would consider standard size weights, like these MDT weights on the side of here, it actually impedes the arc rail. So you can't use the arc rail if you're using those MDT size weights, which a lot of companies make M-LOK weights in that size. Luckily, Victrix has their own accessory brand called Roam, and you can buy these like skinnier weights, obviously, that will work with that. But to me, MDT weights are sort of like the most generic basic size weight for M-LOKs, and you can't really use them on this forend without giving up the functionality of your arc rail. So that is something to keep a note. Also, as I mentioned before, the front section of this is M-LOK, but here these slots are completely decorative, and I really don't like when companies prioritize form over function, because right here is prime real estate for putting something like a thumb shelf or any other sort of control item for your support side hand to help control the rifle. This edge, like this edge here on the forend, is quite sharp. It is rounded, but there's not much material to put your thumb there to help control it when you're riding a barricade bag. So if you had an M-LOK slot here, you could put a thumb rest on that really easily, but unfortunately the M-LOK stops halfway down the forend, and this stuff you can't really use. All right, going on to the magwell. Before we talk about that, I will cover the magazines. So this is the magazine, and it's a 10 rounder. Very similar to like the Voodoo style mags in terms of just the general design. You have a straight stack of rounds, and you have these pull tabs on the side for your follower. It is a lot longer than a Voodoo mag. I have one here. So this is a 10 round Voodoo mag beside the 10 round Victrix mag, and you can see if I line up the top, the Victrix mag is like almost half an inch longer, even though they're both 10 rounders. They do seem to feed okay, but my biggest gripe with them is the spring tension in the follower. There's almost like no preload. As you get, you know, down the stack, obviously it gives you good tension, but as you're using your rounds, the last like 2 rounds in the magazine are held in with very, very little spring tension. So if you're moving really aggressively on a barricade, I've actually had rounds slip up, and it'll cause a malfunction when you go to push the bolt forward. It's barely being held in. You can see how easily it comes off the thing there, and if I just smack it, you can see it does move off the mag. So definitely needs more spring tension in my opinion. So I wish they either used a longer spring or a stronger spring or something, because you definitely need a little bit more preload in the spring. The Voodoo mags have a lot more preload when they're all the way extended, so you don't have that issue. But I was finding for sure that was definitely an issue with the Victrix mags. Right there, nosedive. So you can see it's sitting flat. It should be like that. So you have to be careful with these things. So again, nosedive, and that's max. So So like this one's already nosedive. So like it's flat. Still there you go. Now it's fixed. Okay. A little bit more janky than the Voodoo ones. Like the base plates rattle a lot more. They're just held in with this, you know, the base plate like spacer thing. But they're okay. Besides the spring tension, they do not have an adjustable mag latch or a, you know, height for the magazine, which I found a little strange because tuning these rimfires is quite important for reliable feeding. But I can kind of understand it because this thing is sold as a complete system. So if they have all their dimensions right, the chassis was built for the system, so it should be at a good height. Magazine latch on the chassis is not adjustable either, so you really don't have a way of tuning the magazine height. But again, hopefully you wouldn't need that because it's sold as one unit anyway. I will say the magazines, unfortunately though, have a lot of movement in the magwell in the chassis. So again, from the standpoint of like a PRS style shooter, oftentimes you're pushing your rifle into a bag, a barricade bag, and the bag will push your magazine. And you can see how much movement there is there. It really rocks the magazine downwards, and it has caused feeding issues. So that's not really an issue with the action itself or the magazine. It's just how it fits in the chassis. So the fact that this barricade stop here doesn't protect the magazine at all, and it allows it, you know, to have quite a bit of slop inside this magwell, is definitely a downside. That caused me some issues. There are ways to alleviate that. You can use one of these guys here, which is one of these Gray Ops bag stops. This is the short version, but it just mounts onto your Arca rail here and helps protect your magazine from your barricade bag. So they make a long and a short version of this. I run these on some other chassis that I have. Definitely an option for the Venus chassis here as well. The thumb rest here is like an awkward height for me, but this is totally subjective. I just think the fact that it's machined into the aluminum here, you don't have a choice of where you put it. Oftentimes when I'm shooting this rifle, I'll just have it higher anyway, because I think that's just what I prefer, but this thumb rest just feels kind of weird. All right, so I don't want to sound like I'm just complaining about the rifle, because overall it is quite a nice rifle for sure. And as I mentioned before, again, there is a pro version that comes with another chassis that fixes a lot of the issues. So the forend looks beefier, the M-LOK slots run all the way down, you still have a full Arca rail, it comes with a very long barricade stop and a slightly different buttstock design. So that right there would take care of a lot of the issues that I was encountering using this in a match, a PRS style match. So if I were to purchase a Venus 22 for myself, I would definitely look for the pro version. Obviously it's going to be more money, but I think it'd be worth every penny because you're getting really a PRS ready rifle with that chassis, with the pro Venus chassis. And I noticed, not confirmed, but from what I could see online, it looks like the barrel profile on the Venus Pro is also thicker, which is what I would prefer, because this one again tapers quite significantly and then just runs straight. But that one looks like a more heavy barrel profile, which would definitely be my preference. Something I did want to touch on now is I did not know that this Venus small bore was a 700 footprint, which it's technically not. Victrix won't say anywhere that it's 700 footprint because I guess it's, again, not really, but you can actually put this in 700 footprint chassis, at least the ones that I have. I could install this in and it was actually running completely fine, which was pretty cool. So because I wasn't in love with this chassis, I actually put this in my MDT ACC Elite, and I ran the last half of the 10 stages that day with this rifle in my ACC Elite. So you just have to obviously adjust the mag height using the Elite mag latch, which is adjustable. The only thing that's kind of weird is because of the design of this action and the chassis here, there's a bolt cutout in the action, or pardon me, in the receiver, sort of like what you would normally see in the chassis. So when you put this in a chassis, you have like a double stack of this cutout here. It's like one cutout stacked on top of another, which looks really, really weird. I think the reason for that is the chassis that Victrix gives you cradles upwards onto the receiver more than a regular 700, inletted chassis, which also means you can't put a 700 clone in the Venus chassis because the bolt handle will hit this cutout here before it's all the way closed. So that's one thing to note, but I did run it in the ACC and it was running quite well. I had tried it before on the bench and I knew it was an option. So I shot the first 5 stages to see how this chassis would perform for the match. I already had my speculations that I wasn't going to love it, which was definitely the case. So I threw it in the ACC Elite and I finished the match with the Venus in the ACC Elite, which was kind of cool, to be honest. So I didn't know that, so I thought I definitely want to mention that in this video.
Impact. That cold bore was because you didn't have the condom on. That's a good point, actually. Yeah.
The bag was tore off. The bag I bought was tore off.
Impact. Impact. Impact.
Right in my head.
Impact. 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 Impact.
Was that ricochet into the dirt?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I shot that high. I was like, what the heck?
It was, yes. It was not an impact.
Not an impact. I was just confused why it went so high.
Impact.
You're on the wrong cover.
Impact. Impact. You hit it. Impact.
So I know I've mentioned quite a few things in this video, but just to recap, Italian company, really nice machining, barreled action is really nice and accurate. One of the most smooth and nice feeling bolt actions I've ever felt on any rifle, center fire or rim fire. The chassis is a little bit of a letdown for PRS style shooting. For bench rest and stuff, I'm sure it could be fine, but look for the Venus Pro if you do want to shoot PRS style matches with this rifle. So if you loosen this grub screw and you compress the springs, you can actually pop the cheek piece out of the chassis, which is pretty funny.